It's really good to see you that you have time today. How is life in Parma these days?
It's nice. It's a little bit raining, but as usual, I think spring is arriving, Easter is arriving, so we are hoping for the sun.
Oh yeah, this is this weekend. Do you have any particular plans for the weekend?
No, no, no. I will pass Easter with the family, quite a relaxing place. It will be a time of relax and thoughts.
But Parma is probably one of the best places in the world anyways, to spend the Easter weekend.
For food and wine, that's for sure. It's a gastronomic experience, let's say. But it's not only Parma, it's the entire region, Emilia-Romagna, that from that point of view is really, really attractive.
When someone, I mean, can you update me a little bit about Parma, please?
Mm.
I'm from Austria, Vienna, and sometimes I mix just things up or I start forgetting things. Can you update me on your region? What is Parma famous for?
Yeah, Parma is famous for cheese, Grana
Mm.
Padano, for ham, prosciutto di Parma, for wine, we have a good wine, and in general is a part of Italy that has a really, really strong agricultural tradition. Barilla, for example, the pasta
Mm,
producer,
yeah.
is localized in Parma. Parmalat is localized in Parma. Today is Lactalis. And only in the last, let's say, 50, 80 years, they start to have companies belonging to different industrial sector, including pharma. But there is a quite famous cosmetic company called Davines, just a few kilometers far from there. So they start to diversify the local economy, but the roots are in agriculture, obviously.
I remember Parmalat from the Formula One races. It was one of the big sponsors, I think, in
Yeah,
the 90s of the last century,
yeah. And at a certain point, they collapsed a little bit. But now
unfortunately.
they are restarting, let's say. They are still alive. The company is still existing, simply has been bought by Lactalis, that is a French company.
Mhm. When we look on the pharma side of Parma, what makes pharma in Parma so special?
It was, let's say, a result of different things that happened in time. In reality, Parma has not a strong tradition in pharma. Everything started before the Second World War when the Chiesi family, the actual owner of the company, the ancestor, decided to move from to be a pharmacist to produce drug. And it started in a really small lab in Parma downtown. The small lab was destroyed during the Second World War, but Parma was bombed by Allies. They moved a little bit out of the town and he rebuilt the lab and the manufacturing plant. That part of the town was the headquarters of Parma up to 4 or 5 years ago.
Mm.
And what was impressive was the growth of the company because at the beginning it was really a small company, small pharma producer. And today we have around 3.4 billion revenues. It was an impressive growth, particularly in the last 10 years. And now we really move out of the town because it was not possible to build the headquarters inside the town. We have two new buildings, and we are thinking how to revamp the old manufacturing plan. There is a plan called Chiesi Garden is the name of the project. The idea is to create a place of interaction and collision between the company, the local community, and external community. Also, the innovation unit will move in 2028 in that place because it's exactly one of the entry point to the company, one of the point where there is an interface that links what is happening inside the company with what is happening outside the company. So it was a story, quite an interesting story because the family was the actual shareholder, are the third generation, were really the protagonist of the story. It was really linked to some entrepreneur, strict to saying so, that took the risk against all odds. They fight to fulfill their plan and they succeed.
That's good. That's good to hear. Um, It sounds to me like a lot is going on in pharma in your hometown. And with activity, especially these days on social media, many people seem to be in a hurry and cut off after 5 to 10 minutes from a podcast recording to come back later. Let's start our episode with defining what they will miss when they don't listen to the end. For the audience leaving after 5 minutes, what are your three core messages you want them to remember?
What they will miss a different approach that a pharma company is trying to implement to interact both with external innovation, but also to, let's say, share with the external ecosystem something. Shared value for us is a value. And we are not a usual pharma company. We are a strange company, a B Corp company with strong ethical values that are justifying our purpose, that is in any case to impact on patient. But we are really committed in doing that, also from an economic point of view, from a strategic point of view. So we are not the usual pharmaceutical big corporate trying to discuss about how they are innovative, how they are better than other. We know that we are humble. We know that we need to interact with other because maybe we have talents inside, but we have obviously not all the talents that we need to really impact on the final user of our products, that is a patient, is a citizen, is a human being that has a problem. And we would like really to solve that problem, to support the patient to survive and to live better than is possible. And in doing that, we are not limiting our focus to big markets where there are money able to pay the drug. We try to have health equity as a strong element of every business that we are launching. And the idea that everyone everywhere has to be able to access the best treatment as possible is driving our activities, is driving also our innovation activities, is driving our behavior in less developed countries and in more developed countries, because health equity is not only a problem of less developed countries. We have health equity issues in US, in Europe, in China, and we try to manage those problems in order to be impactful. This is what someone will lose, a different story.
That's good to hear. You're doing a lot of work in open innovation and building ecosystems, which I think is extremely important, especially in Europe. Let's come back to that a little bit later and stay first with your position in the pharma industry.
Mm.
What attracted you to healthcare innovation?
It's a tricky question. First of all, I think that we have to move a little bit back in defining what innovation is for us. Innovation for us is not technology; it's a process. Is a process that permit the passage from something to a solution, from a scientific results to a product that is offered to a patient. If we interpret innovation in that way, we can also understand why pharmaceutical innovation is changing. It's not simply the development of a drug. You move from the development of a drug that is a product, usually technology push product. You start from a choose of a target or of a modality and to try to build something that hit that target because you believe is important. It's the shift from that vision to a different vision that is we need to solve a problem. If it's a drug, if it's a digital health solution, if it's a medical device, if it's a nutraceutic, if it's a service, doesn't matter. We need to solve a problem of a patient. And the passage from the need to the problem is driving our activity and is justifying from a certain point of view the reason why we cannot rely only on internal capabilities. We are a pharma company. We know how to develop drug. This is our competence, but drugs are only one component of a possible solution for a problem that a patient or an healthcare system has. So we need to be a little bit more systemic, more holistic, more open-minded, more with higher degree of freedom in observing the external world. And in doing that, we need to interact with ecosystem. We need to interact with ecosystem simply because the complexity of the actual life of the actual pharmaceutical sector require multidisciplinary competences. And the more the ecosystem is able to offer us such really rich offer in terms of technologies, but also opinion, vision, perception, more we can learn, more we can grow, and more we can comply with our mission, that at the end of the day, it's always to impact on patient. And this is something that is happening, I think, across the pharmaceutical sector. More and more companies are trying to complement their core business, the drug development, with elements that reinforce their positioning from one side, but make easier the life for the patient. Digital health is the easiest sector where it's possible to do that, but we are developing product for chronic respiratory diseases. Probably 90% of the product are inhalated. So also medical devices, the inhalator, it's included in that vision. And we already work in that direction. Most of our products are not simply drugs, are drugs plus a medtech component, plus in some case a digital health element. And that way of thinking move our attention in terms of innovation from the traditional drug discovery activity to something other. Another time is an holistic vision on how we can solve the problem of the patient. Obviously, that approach doesn't mean that we have to become a digital health company, a medtech company, a service company. And this is the reason why there is a really strong justification in having an open innovation team, because we can interpret the relation with those different competences in a completely different way. It's not a question of M&A, patenting, licensing. It's more a question of long-term partnership, long-term collaboration. We call it not transactional deal. Agreement that are not based on the fact that we will be the owner of the technology. Simply we collaborate. It's something that happened, for example, in pulmonary rehabilitation. It was not my team in doing that, it was the digital health team, but the philosophy is the same. We didn't acquire a company able to develop and deliver a pulmonary rehabilitation product. We partner, we support the company, we help the company in growing, and the company is still independent and existing. At the same time, in that way, we were able to offer to the patient something that is useful in increasing the quality, improving the quality of life. And that philosophy, the philosophy that collaboration is driving innovation more than ownership of the results, is the philosophy that drive our behavior, together with the idea that we need to start from needs, but at the same time, we need to be bold. We need to identify long-term challenges. And that equilibrium, short-term identification of solution to the problem, and the long-term challenges, moonshot, things that are really bold, is characterizing every activity that we are performing and realizing. This is something that is happening in the sector. We are not the only one that are starting to think in that way. Every company is interpreting that challenge in a different way, but there is an impact on the external ecosystem. The external ecosystem move to be simply a place where there are opportunities to a place where it's possible to build partnership. Is no more a market approach. It's something of different. It's more a collaborative approach. I'm really believing that purpose, collaboration, and agility has to come together. We need a purpose, and as I told you before, we have a strong purpose. We need agility because we need to be flexible. We need to move to the usual paradigm of big corporates, slow decision, risk aversion, to a different paradigm where the flexibility is increasing, the capability to be agile and to interact with organizations that are smaller than us but more smarter than us is increasing. So we need agility, and we need to learn how to collaborate with that organization, because innovation is a game that is played by teams, not by heroes. The hero culture, we have the scientist that was able to drive the growth has probably ended. Is no more the reality. Today we need a team, multidisciplinary, biodiverse, let's say, team where there are different competences, different way to see the problem, different capability to interpret the solution. Because in that way we can be holistic. If we are holistic, we can be more sustainable, and sustainable innovation is one of our drivers. We would like not only to solve the problem of the patient, we would like to impact positively on the planet, we would like to impact positively on the people. So we need such a holistic approach, and the holistic approach could only derive from different perceptions that are integrated in a common vision.
There's a lot to unpack in there. Let's walk through it step by step. I have noted a lot of questions. I think it's really interesting to dive into this paradigm shift. When someone had asked me 20 years ago what the mission of a pharma company is, it's basically bring a drug to the patient as fast as possible. And in Europe, with the caveat, on the local market. So Austrian companies work for Austria and Italian companies for Italy. This would be my mission statement for any pharma company in the world. And you said now it's different. When you had to describe the mission of today's pharma company in one sentence, how would it look like?
Haha. In one sentence, they
Or
have to
more.
solve. No. But I think that is a key point, because if you analyze the mission statement of the first 10 pharma companies, they are more or less the same. I would like to improve the life of the patient through my products, or I would like to solve the problem X with an approach based on Y. They are really similar. What is common, I think, is the idea that we move from the simple statement, we are producing and selling drugs, to a different statement that is, we are solving problems. The patient-centered approach, if you would like to use that term, it's today the rule. What is different, I think, that you can consider patient as a passive receiver of a solution or as an integral part of the solution. Patient-centered doesn't mean that you involve patient, that you consider patient a proactive element of the problem. We tend to consider patient as a proactive element of the problem. And this is the reason why when we are drafting the patient journey, trying to understand the needs that we can solve, we start from an healthy patient. We are aware that the disease, it's only one moment in the life of a patient. And if you analyze holistically the patient journey, you will discover immediately that also from a pharma company point of view, there are a lot of opportunities that you can exploit. Our activities, particularly our external innovation activities, are not so much focused on drugs. Obviously, they are focused on drugs. We are doing scouting for early stage, but we are exploring the prediction problem, the diagnostic problem, the adherence problem, the monitoring problem. All those problems that could obviously split in sub-problem are representing a challenge for a pharma company. The blockbuster era, I give you the product, it's the only product on the market. If it's working 60% of the patient, doesn't matter. Probably is no more real. Now, more and more, we try to personalize, to be more precise in our approach. But the only way to personalize is to understand. If you understand, you immediately are obliged to take care of diagnosis and prediction, because earlier you intervene, better is. And you take care about adherence, because you need that the patient will comply with the treatment. And if you are doing that, you need to monitor. What is nice, what is good of those of that approach is that you are collecting data, and more the pharmaceutical world is based on data. Data move to become the consequence and the result of activity, to become the starting point of activity. the evidences that we are collecting from clinics or from our experience, day-by-day experience, are really important to be able to be more effective in what we are doing. And data are not only limited to the traditional clinical trial data, it's something of more complex. We need data, behavioral data about the patient. The patient are changing in time. We need data that are coming from the market, because we are not the only one doing something. We have competitors. And so the data became more and more an integral part of the analysis that we are doing. It's not easy. It's not easy because there are really few companies around the world that today are putting data at the center, but we try to do that. We are in that direction. The data-based company will be probably the reality in the future, and data will become the real value of a company. Obviously, the company are based on R&D. R&D is based on scientific data. Moving from that paradigm to the patient data is different, because you have to add the layer of complexity. It's not simply the efficacy of a drug, it's something of different. Where is the patient? There is a link between, I don't know, the pollution in a specific territory and the diseases. There is a age problem, so younger are less compliant than older. You increase the complexity. You need to collect data that are coming from different sources, and you need to be able to analyze. AI helps, but to understand, because the analysis, it's only one part of the game. You have to understand, you have to extract insight and to make insight actionable. And this is a challenge for many pharma companies that are using the opposite, to have structured and standard process to develop drug, starting from science. It's good because science is the starting point, is important. But once that the process starts, the process is made in a silos with really few interaction about the external environment. The process, the project is analyzed only on the data coming from the project. And this is a danger. This is really, really a terrible approach, because it's not more aligned with what is happening in the real world out of the pharma company. But many pharma companies are moving in that direction. So it will be probably the rule in 10 years from now, particularly for products that are conceived or to treat chronic diseases or to treat really life-threatening phases and diseases, because that's are the two main area where there is a really strong medical need. Chronic diseases, because most of the chronic diseases that we have are treated with symptom management approach. So we are not curing the disease. We are managing the symptom. And the big shift will be to move toward disease-modifying solution. We cure the disease, we stop the disease. For acute phase is more more tricky. Stroke or transplantation are events in the life of a human being that are tragic. Another time, we need to be able to intervene as soon as possible, better as possible. And to do that, we have to take care about the quality of life, not only on the solution, because the diseases is not the patient. The patient has different need. And we have to take care of that. What does it mean practically? It means practically that we can not only develop drugs, but we have to understand how to manage the entire problem with all the different aspects of the problem. It doesn't mean that pharma company has to become agro-food company because we have to take care of food. But I was involved before to join Chiesi in a project where a pharma company was taking care of the food that cancer patient has to take to increase antioxidant. And this is a really good example. Is a pharma company duty? No. But they take care of patient. And agro-food, the food that you are eating could support you in a really difficult moment after a chemotherapy. And this is really a good example, I think, of how there is a shift in the focus of pharma company.
I love the approach that you are taking. When I think back to the 3 decades, I think the pharma mission was really treat a disease and that's it, and bring the product to the patient as fast as possible. You now mentioned that today your company wants to view the situation holistically. They want to look at the entire problem, not just the disease, the endpoint of the disease, but the progression of the disease and how the disease interacts with the patient and how the patient is included in the healthcare system. You mentioned that in 10 years from now, this holistic view will be normal in the industry. Can you describe what that means for drug developers? How will the industry look in 10 years, and what does that mean for drug developers?
Obviously, as a company, we are selling drug. So
Mhm.
drug are still the main focus of our activities, and probably it will remain in the future. So it's not true the pharma company will destroy their actual business model. The only difference is that the drug will be one part of the solution that we will deliver to the patient. And in doing that, pharma company will start to internalize a little bit of competence that today they don't have. The pharma sector is quite conservative, for example, in terms of AI, data management, and so on. So we need to increase that kind of competences. We need to increase the competence that we have able to exploit the interaction with the external ecosystem. We will have a more decentralized way to manage pharma company. Why decentralized? Because the personalization approach will require also cultural and country personalization. It will be a small revolution that we have, but at the end of the day, we will need to create ecosystems around us, ecosystems that are composed by complementary actors. It's something that is happening. If you think to drug discovery and AI drug discovery today, most of the pharma company have agreement with small startups that are living around the pharma company, that are interacting with the pharma company, but they are part of a big ecosystem and they can interact with multiple pharma
Mhm.
companies. That way of thinking, where there is not the ownership of the relation, but the relation is shared, could be part of the future. Obviously, the pharma company are in competition. We are in competition with some friends that is bigger than us. And so we have also to put in competition the ecosystems that we are able to build. But that ecosystem approach is not today part of the normal DNA of a pharma company. It's not simply the string of pearl of a supply chain. It's different. You need to have a flexible ecosystem that change in time, that depend on the needs that you would like to fulfill, that maybe are including relation with companies that are completely different than your company. The example that I made about the food, the cancer patient, and the pharma company is clear. That pharma company partnered with a company that was not a healthcare pharma company. They were working in a completely different sector. And this is interesting because if you approach holistically the problem, a lot of opportunities are in front of you. You can really follow, let's say, a blue ocean approach. You can create your market from a certain point of view. And the flexibility inside the ecosystem and the capability to manage those relations with actors that are ranging from the university to another corporation will become, I think, a competitive factor. Another time is innovation because you are managing a process that drive to a different solution. Also, if it's not technological, managerial innovation is existing, organizational innovation is existing, business model innovation, and this is another element that is part of the discussion, is innovation. And what I think pharma company will become in the future is that they will be not only R&D engine, but they will be innovation engine, interpreting R&D as a one part of the innovation model that they will implement. If you analyze what the first 10 pharma companies are doing, you will immediately identify elements of that vision. There are more and more pharma companies that are interacting with AI, IT companies. This is normal. AI is fashion. It's useful, by the way, not only fashion, but they are starting to interact with cosmetic company, agro-food company, service company. If you think to some companies that are trying to integrate the last mile, opening e-commerce shop. And this is the way that is followed today to approach holistically the patient. At the end, the pharma company needs to make money. They need to sell drugs. Simply, they will sell drugs in a different way, trying to complement the drugs with different elements that will differentiate the offer. That is critical. At the same time, increase the impact on the patient, and this is the second element. But there is also a pharmacoeconomic consequence. Probably it will become more convenient at health system level. Because if you manage the problem, you manage the different phase of the problem. If you simply sell the drug, your pharmacoeconomic evaluation is made on the drug. It's changed also the paradigm from that point of view.
That's clear. That's clear. Let me ask you a follow-up question to that part, especially the ecosystem building. When I think back in history, how the pharma model evolved. I think before the 70s or before the 80s, it was mostly pharma does it all internally. So it's a big company, and from R&D to the patient, they covered the entire value chain. Then there was the Genentech moment in the 80s, where venture capitalists shifted the paradigm and said, no, look, let's take it outside. Let's play around innovation because, as you mentioned, innovation is not in the DNA of a huge organization. Pharma would be better off in just serving the patient and let small entities do the entire innovation process funded by VCs. And now comes the next paradigm shift where you say, now we're going towards ecosystems. My question to you is, why is running an open innovation platform and an ecosystem building superior to the old model that we have in the pharma industry? What makes it better?
Let's start from some data. Today, on average, more or less 50% of the pipeline of pharma companies came in from outside. So this is the first, let's say, brick that we have to put on the table. Pharma company have R&D productivity issue. They have a need. The external world, small companies, the paradigm of the 80s, 90s, it's offering innovation, it's filling a gap. Why we need to move from that paradigm? Simply because the complexity of the solution is increasing. And if the complexity is increasing, the traditional way, okay, I wait that venture capitalists invest in a company. I wait that the company reach a certain stage of clinical development. At that point, I buy. Is no more working because we have today biotech companies that are reaching the market. So corporates have an increased competitive pressure from biotech companies that are able to reach the market. They need to move quicker and in a smarter way. Quicker, obviously, for a big company is always an issue. Big companies need standardization, need processes, and the standardization and processes are against flexibility and speed. But at the same time, it's possible to do something. Smarter means that we cannot simply think we can buy everything, because it's not true. We have to return back in the innovation process, intercepting at early stage the opportunities with a higher degree of risk, and we have to engage those opportunities, keeping the risk out of the company boundaries. How we can do that? We can do that simply interacting with actors that could, let's say, manage the risk for us. It could be the startup, it could be incubator, accelerator, technology transfer office, investors. But that kind of relation is not simply a fire and forget activity. You need to build trust. You need to be at least a mid-term partnership. When you have that network of factor, investor, accelerator, incubator, university, the result is that you have your ecosystem. is an innovative ecosystem. It's not the entire ecosystem that you need. It's an ecosystem that could change in time, because today maybe it's linked to AI, only to give an example. Tomorrow will be linked to, I don't know, gene therapy in chronic diseases. You have that flexible and moving ecosystem that will touch each other. They will complement each other. More you are able to have a diversified ecosystems, more you will be innovative, because the real innovation is happening at the interfaces of different world. If you work at that interfaces and you work at that interfaces, AI plus gene therapy or AI plus biomanufacturing or AI plus I don't know what, you will be really innovative. Where is the secret? Is the knowledge of the technology? Probably not. Is the capability to implement the process the secret? This is the value. And this is the reason why we interpret innovation as a process, as not as a technology, a specific technology.
Can you walk me through the definition of the innovation process at your company? I find it particularly interesting.
Yeah, it's when I tell you that is a process, is because we believe that innovation pass through different stages. There is the creativity moment, there is the what we call a concept generation moment, and there is the implementation moment. The creativity moment starts from needs or problems, because you have to transform the need in a problem to be solved. And this is something that we are done internally, but we are also realizing externally. We are interacting with external actors that are proposing us creativity results. When we move from the idea to the concept is because we are trying to understand if a crazy idea is feasible. Not all the crazy ideas are feasible, unfortunately. So there is a triage process. And if the triage process is positive, we move to the implementation phase. And the implementation phase, it's based on, let's say, 3 steps. The first one is we use the term pilot project, a small project with the idea to do the killer experiment, the feasibility study, the validation activity. They are really small projects, quick and dirty, let's say 3 months, 6 months maximum. If the project is positive, we tend to move to co-development activities for a certain period of time. As I told you before, we tend to manage the risk, trying to impact on the company core business less as possible. So sometimes the risk is managed outside the company. And this is the reason why we need the ecosystem. The ecosystem acts as a social support network for the development of the innovation. And if the co-development project is positive, we can move to more traditional transactional relation. This is more or less the framework that we try to implement. And our role is obviously to understand a little bit about the technology. That's sure. But we became crazy about the need. We have a really market-oriented approach. And we became crazy about the process. We are really committed in implementing the process, following some rules that we defined. Why we need to do that? There is a problem of efficiency, obviously, but there is also a problem of coherence. If you are saying that you would like to impact on patient, that impact on patient will be a key priority. You have to keep the priority along the process. We would like to impact positively on planet. This is another element that we have to consider across the entire project. It's not only a problem of future profits. It's something of more deep. There are variables or criteria that have to be a go no go, also if they are against the simple fact that we will make money. This is another time, the reason why I told you at the beginning, we are a different pharma company. From that point of view, we are really ethical. We need to bring solution to the patient. And in doing that, we are making money. But the money is giving us the prosperity, and the prosperity permit us to do that another time. It's really a virtuous circle. And the three steps, the need and creativity, the concept generation, and the implementation are characterizing our innovation process. Obviously, they could be personalized depending on the typology of need that you would like to solve. They require internal collaboration with all the other company functions that are synergistic. We are not alone. We are a small team, but we are interacting with the business unit, with R&D, with legal, finance, HR, every company function that is relevant. It's involved. It's a process that could be applied for digital, medtech, even traditional pharma products, and is a product is a process that has been really, really standardized following the ISO technical norms 56,000 series. So we tried to align what we are doing to the best rules that are existing around the world. But at the same time, we try to adapt the process and the rules to our core values. So it's a compromise, it's a smart compromise in our opinion, that permit to create a win-win relation with external stakeholder. And this is a key point. We would like to permit the growth of the external stakeholder. We are not interested in killing the external stakeholder. Only to give an example, this is one of the reasons why we tend to avoid to use traditional in-licensing approach. Obviously, we are in-licensing patent, but when you in-license a patent, you are aware that at least 50% of the knowledge linked to that patent is in the brain of the original scientist.
Yeah.
You are only buying 50% of the know-how. And this is something that we would like to avoid. We need a win-win relation because we know that the transfer of knowledge takes time. And particularly if it's the case of a startup, we need a win-win relation because we have the maximum respect for the entrepreneur. We are aware that someone that decided to take an initiative to develop something of crazy merit respect. Is not simply someone that has to be, let's say, compressed to obtain the maximum. It's someone that could be a partner. If you align the purposes, you will be more effective and more impactful. And the same happens for venture capitalists. We think that venture capitalists could be partnering in doing that, not because we are putting money in the fund, but because in that way we are validating a technology where the venture capitalists could put a bet. We are lowering the risk also for the venture capitalist. It's a triangle of interest, and our goal is to have a win-win-win relation and not simply to maximize our advantage vis-a-vis the other advantages. And this is the ecosystem another time. In an ecosystem, you have co-petition relation. You have relations that maybe start from competition, but arrive to cooperation. And we would like to cooperate with all those actors. If it's a university, it's the same. We would like to cooperate with a university. The university is not a passive source of opportunities. It's a partner. And we know that if we create that platform, that collaborative platform, we can have more advantages than simply that if we buy one patent.
That's an interesting point that you made, that open innovation in companies is often a little bit problematic because of the size. So it's small and it's bigger. And when I talk to scientists, I usually recommend talk to pharma early to get a feeling of what the market is doing. And pharma has all the data and information, and it's really important. And then I get a pushback and they say, wait a minute. When we talk with a pharma company about our idea, and they have much more resources than we do, then they can just copy it and produce it themselves. Why should they make a deal with us? isn't that risky that we present our early idea, which is sometimes in concept stage, early to pharma, and risking that they push us out of the market? Can you debunk this fear and explain to scientists why, in your case with your company, that's an artificial fear and they should not worry about it too much because the dynamics in your company are different?
Yeah. Uh, Trust became important.
Mm.
Trust and coherence and transparency became important. Obviously, there are NDA that could protect the scientist, that's for sure. But there is also another problem that pharma company cannot overcome. If the idea is too innovative, it's not true that pharma company have all the knowledge able to replicate the idea. Another time, 50%, if there is a patent, 50% of the knowledge remain in the brain of the scientist. So pharma company needs to have at least a mid-term relation to be able to absorb. But there is a third element that is important. Why pharma company has to take high risk on crazy ideas when the credo inside pharma company is we have to eliminate the risk? It's true they can potentially copy, but have they the interest in doing that alone? Probably not. The traditional innovative model of pharma company is risk adverse. This is the reason why there is a high attrition rate also in preclinical level. They tend to kill what demonstrate high probability to fail. It's not sure that they fail, but they tend to kill.
Mm.
At the opposite, crazy ideas have a so high risk that pharma company could be supportive, but not absorbing immediately. And this is what is happening in many pharma companies, and the reason why pharma companies are creating, let's say, sandboxes where it's possible to play with that ideas. There are companies that have external vehicle that are doing that job. They are evaluating, they are investing, they are playing with something that is crazy. In some cases, there are internal functions that are doing that job. But when there is that issue, the pharma company needs a scientist. It's not
Mm.
simply a piece of paper. It's the accumulated knowledge of the scientist that make the difference. Obviously, this is more relevant at the beginning of the innovation journey because at a certain point, it became a business as usual. The implementation phase is what the pharma company are able to do in a wonderful way because they are really efficient. But the creativity phase and the conception phase are still a little bit fuzzy. It's where the scientist, the original scientist, it's key. It's where it's not possible for a pharma company simply to overcome all the problem and say it's my job, because they are not conceived to do that. Even pharma company that have strong R&D, they need to be exposed to external idea, and they need to have a little bit of time to absorb those ideas. And the only way to do that is to be transparent and to keep the relation for a certain period of time with a lot of respect for the original originator of the scientific results. And this is the way that we are following. We have a lot of respect for the original entrepreneurs or the original scientist. We didn't try to absorb immediately to in-license a patent.
Mm.
We need time. We need time to understand, and that time require a strong collaboration with the external actor. It's not simply a question of we use a service. Some pharma companies are simply buying a result. It's not so easy because if you buy a result and the result is something that you don't know, it's not useful. And the complexity today require to interact with multiple scientists at the same time. So we tend to work in that way. And the story of Chiesi, it's based on that transparent relation. Another time, we are a company, we would like to maximize our profit because this is the way to do research. But it's possible to do that activity in a really ethical way.
That's a great point that you mentioned before, that the pharma company needs time to evaluate an idea and the concept before they step into an in-licensing deal. And a few minutes ago, you mentioned that the speed in pharma usually is a little bit slower because of the size
Mm.
and the processes which you need when you want to bring drugs to the patient. It's just a regulatory requirement. When you look at the startup world, we have these small agile teams moving very fast and doing still research. They are not exploring only one solution, but also have still their aperture open to explore and play around. Very often I hear the argument, it's so useless talking with pharma because they are so slow and we want to get a deal done in 3 months. Can you explain to the scientists when they approach a company like yours or other pharma
Mm.
companies what they have to expect and be prepared for when we talk about time and should not worry that it is too slow and this is just normal?
I'm smiling because I'm coming from the startup world. I remember that the first time that I was in a pharma company, it was not Chiesi. I was shocked in understanding that the signature of an NDA took 1 month. I was used to sign an NDA in 1 hour.
Yeah.
But it's true. Big companies have standard processes that are conceived for efficiency from one side and for risk avoiding from another point of view. So it's not a surprise. It has not to be a surprise that a pharma company is not immediately interacting. Only to give an example of what is happening today, we go to an event, we meet a startup, the startup send us the deck. From that point, we start a process. We evaluate the deck. We involve the different function in expressing opinion. We decide it's good to continue, it's not good to continue. We try to understand which kind of collaborative path could be implemented in case of interest. That process took 1 month, 1 month and a half. And I can understand the startups that are saying, come on, they are not answering. It means that they are not interested. It's not true. Maybe it's simply the internal processes that require time. And you have to think that we are interacting in parallel with 50, 60 startups. Only in 2024, we evaluated and interacted with around 250 startups that passed the first triage. It's a lot of work, to be honest. And the more the proposal is innovative, more is difficult. Because if it's similar to what we know how to evaluate. But if not similar, we have also to understand how to evaluate. And so it's not easy. From a startup point of view, don't worry if there is not an immediate feedback. You can insist a little bit. This is not a problem. And you have to wait. 1 month usually is a good time to have a first reaction, but it happened to me that we answered after 6 months to a startup. Because maybe we excluded the startup now, today, and we realize after a couple of months that maybe it was interesting because there are other scientific data that are supporting the scientific hypothesis behind the startup. So don't worry, pharma company are tracking everything. They have a internal platform where all the external opportunities are listed. So you will be in any case tracked in time, and in many cases you will be followed in time. So you need to meet the company several times before to reach the stage where the company is saying you are interested. 3, 4. We are lucky because we have both internet today. It's a really wonderful vehicle to do that. But we have B2B events all around the world. Pharma company are proactively attending those B2B events. And every pharma company is quite transparent about the entry point to the company. Every pharma company has the business development page, the open innovation page with names. You can contact directly those names, but it takes time. We are a big organization, and bigger is the organization, slower is the reaction. It's a question of, let's say, internal neural network.
Yeah. No, it's completely understandable. And I think this is an important point that you mentioned that especially companies and VCs need to understand that also licensing is more or less a sales process.
Yeah.
And it's not like buying a chewing gum, like walking into a grocery store and say, okay, here is the money, give me the good, and that's it. It needs a nurturing phase. So it's not just one off, you go in, make a deal. You need some time to get to know the party, and we are talking about long-term relationships. Can you expand a little bit on why you see working together with a company more from the relationship building side and less from the transactional side?
Yeah. Uh, it's quite an interesting point. When we are meeting a startup, we are also evaluating the capability of the startup to develop further the technology.
Mhm.
What does it mean? It means that what we are evaluating is also the team. We are quite similar to a venture capital from that point of view. We need a team that demonstrate transparency, demonstrate capabilities, and demonstrate the commitment to further develop the solution, the technology, the drug, the digital health product, or the device. The team and the competence embedded in the team became a competitive factor for the startup, but something that we evaluate from another point of view. And this is, let's say, a difference vis-a-vis the traditional transactional in licensing deal. If I license a patent, I don't care about the team. I care only about the technology that is protected by the patent. It's a little bit different if I would like to acquire the company or do an M&A, because in that case, the challenge is another time different. I need to integrate the team in my organization. But if you follow a collaborative approach, you need to have a partner. When you choose a partner, you evaluate not only if he's rich or not, if he's handsome or not. You evaluate the compatibility, the
Mm.
fitting.
Mm.
And this is something that we are evaluating. And we are learning how to evaluate better and better. There is a cultural fitting, a scientific fitting, a relational fitting, and you have to answer, but this is the company that I would like to partner with. This is the technology that I would like to implement or to add to my product. And this is the team that is able to develop the technology. We always see teams that are quite strong in terms of science. Science is only exceptionally a problem. Good science is everywhere today.
Mhm.
But we are not seeing so many teams that have market acumen, that are able to develop the science in something of different, that is a solution to a problem. The market acumen, the capability to see what will happen 10 years from now, and the capability to be not falling in love with science are all characteristics that we are looking for. Obviously, science is important. I'm not saying that it's not important. We need good science. We need strong science. But science, from an innovation point of view, is instrumental to build a solution.
Mhm.
We are not finishing with science. We are finishing with a pill or a bottle of something that is used by a patient, or a digital health solution that is used by a patient. Obviously, science is embedded in the solution, is maybe the most important part, but is not the entire solution. We need something more. And the team has to demonstrate to be able to do that.
Let's stay a little bit on the team level. I was smiling because I made a similar argument, I think, 10 years ago, where I said science is a given. There is so much great science out there. It's not a differentiator. You need much more with a team. But I had the feeling that I get stoned by scientists. I have a business background. Say, yo, no, Christian, you don't understand science. This is absolutely not right. Also heard this nice sentence, which is also right. Science always wins. And I say, look, when you want to build a company, you need much more. Uh, can we dive a little bit deeper into the team aspect? You said
Mm.
when you evaluate a company, of course, you look at the science because it's a scientific product and we can't deny that, but you want to see more in a team. Can you expand a little bit more on what kind of skills and personalities you would like to see on board of a team that it makes it a solid acquisition target or licensing partner for your company?
Okay, let's discuss about science at the end.
Mm.
Uh, if we are discussing about an entrepreneurial team, what we would like to see is the capability to see the market in perspective and to evaluate the market in perspective, the capability to move from science to a product, and the capability to own all the scientific knowledge that is required to demonstrate that the science that is behind the business idea, it's real, is important, is impactful. Those three components could be different. Usually they change following the life of the startup. At the beginning, we have only scientists. I made a meeting yesterday evening with a company, wonderful technology, really wonderful. They are all scientists. When I asked them where is the market, they were shocked. Come on, my idea is the best one in the world. I have the best science. You need to understand where is the market. The development of a drug is not easy if it's a drug, but in general, the development of a product is not easy. You have to pass to different phases of development. You have to understand how to escalate what you are doing. You need specific competences in doing that. The manufacturing competence, the clinical trial competence, the capability to understand which kind of supply you need. It's not easy. It's industrial competence. Last but not least, the market acumen. You need a strong strategic approach. And strategy means to understand exactly where you will land after maybe 15 years. And to understand where you will land means that you have to understand how the market will be in 15 years from now, particularly if it's pharma. 15 years is not a number put on the table by chance. It's a time. And you need to understand how to pass through different phases of development able to reach that goal. It's a backcasting activity, but you start from the future. This is normal for startups. And that market acumen, it's really not common. Sometimes we see companies that are simply saying, our product is better of everything today is available on the market, forgetting that to bring their product on the market, they have to invest for 15 years. And that capability, the capability to read the future from a certain point of view, or to have a so strong vision able to change the future, it's what, from my point of view, distinguish a really visionary, good entrepreneur from a manager. The manager have a more short-term perspective. They are able to manage what they have to do. They are not so much able to define what they have to do. And the market acumen, the strategic acumen, it's became key if you are willing to develop a long-term relation. Because when you arrive to buy that company, you buy also the vision. You buy also the capability to change the rule of the game. And you need to have someone able to see the change and explain you the change. Communication capabilities are key for a startup, more and more. Because what they are doing, particularly in the first years of life, is selling their idea. It's the only way to raise money. And more the idea is crazy, different from the standard way to solve things, more is important to sell the idea in a really, really, really wonderful way. Otherwise, you are not able to raise money. Or if you raise money, you are not raising enough money. That is another issue for a startup. So communication capability, strategic acumen are key. The capability, the operational capability, the capability to understand and plan how the company will develop are key. The scientific capability are key for the first year of life of the company, because without them, we cannot start. They will be, let's say, adapted to the operational need. At a certain point, who is falling in love for science has probably to increase the flexibility. You know that sometimes scientists are saying, I'm not a scientist, so all the scientists that are assisting to the blog will say, no, it's not true. Every scientist is saying, I have the truth. This is the solution. I can demonstrate that this is the best way to solve the problem. And they continue to think in that perspective. It's good because this is a commitment. But from a company point of view, this is dangerous. You need to understand at a certain point that you have to transform your idea in a product. And for a company perspective, it became key, and you need to have the internal know-how to do that. Last but not least, that is transversal to the three moments, is the capability to understand how to create value.
Mm-hmm.
The value creation, it's what justify an investment in a startup. You invest not because it's nice, because it's giving you back something. The value creation is another thing that has to be present in a startup. When we meet a startup, we ask to ourselves, where is the money? Not because we would like to become rich, unfortunately. We will be not rich, but because this is the way to sustain the growth. If we are not able to understand where is the money, we have a problem. Also, if science is wonderful, money is instrumental, such as other elements of a startup. We need money because everything is expensive. R&D is expensive. Commercialization is expensive. Manufacturing is expensive. We need to pay scientists simply. So where is the money is a really simple question that had to have an answer. And we are expecting that the startups are telling us on that idea, the money is there.
That's an interesting point. Let's walk through the ideal team composition, because I think it's really important for scientists to understand that, and a large part of my audience comes from that side. So when they want to make a deal with you, and a scientific team approaches you to get some sort of green light or approval that the idea is really sound, and you with your capacity see something on the market where it might fit in, they should be prepared to not just stay a scientific team, but to expand the team. We are not talking about just a CEO saying, I did all my research myself, and when I said there is the market, there is the market, and when I said it has value, it has value, and you can be sure I can develop it also in not only in the lab, but also manufacture it. What you want to see, if I understand you right, is first a business perspective, a business vision, and not only in paper, but in person. You would like to see on the team, on the board, a person who has done the hard work and can explain to you what's the end point of the development. So you are now in 2025, and let's assume you are successful in 2040. Where do you see your company? This is a person you want to see who communicates with you, and not just an AI.
We would like to see the competence.
Mm,
In theory, the scientist could be also someone that has a business acumen and someone that is able to do operations, in theory.
mm,
Practically is impossible. And obviously, those competences changed depending on the level of development of the startups.
mm,
At the beginning, they could be embedded in one person, because
mm,
obviously most of the analysis will be realized on the impact, but on science. But moving in the innovation process, it will be mandatory to have expert, not only someone that 5% of their time read a market research, but never did really something that is linked to marketing. We
yeah.
need the expertise. The expertise is lowering the risk of failure.
Mm,
And is not lowering 100%, because also expert could make mistake. But we are aware about that. If we have all those elements on the table, we perceive the risk lower.
mm,
There is the science, there is someone that is able to transform the science in a product, and there is someone that is able to understand the market. It's wonderful. We have all the basic competences. It's easy? No, it's not easy, because it's also expensive. So you need to reach that stage through different stage of development, where at the beginning, maybe the scientist is alone.
mm,
We interact with universities, so we are also collecting project proposal. And in that case, usually the scientist is alone. Our goal is that we have, if we think that is interesting the proposal, to support the scientists and to complement the scientist's knowledge. And this is good because we can share what we know. When I was saying in describing our approach through the pilot project could be conceived in that way. They could be based on the development of a feasibility study, where obviously there is a strong element linked to market. Because if you analyze feasibility, you analyze also the capability to be appealing for someone at the end of the process. So we are humble by definition, but we need humbleness also from the other part of the table. It's not true that only because you are a Nobel Prize, you know what will
Mm,
happen to a specific patient in 15 years, taking in consideration all the technological and all the market trends. And we are not requiring that. We prefer someone that is saying, I don't know,
mm,
because we can build the knowledge together.
mm,
Uh, it's uh, it's a competence, is a soft skill, let's say, the capability to also recognize the limit. We recognize our limit. We don't know everything. This is the reason why we are going externally to find for new ideas. But sometimes we needed also the counterpart recognize their limits, because in that way we can intervene, we can complement, we can
mm.
synergize.
That's an important point, I think, that you make. It's not only about pitching science to a pharma company, but also to having the skills on board to build the entire thing. I think this is something that every scientist should hear. So when someone wants to found a company to sell it later or collaborate later with pharma, they should be prepared to hire complementary skill sets and
Yeah.
not only stay in the scientific part to increase their odds of making a deal with pharma.
Absolutely, yes, is the cake paradigm. At the beginning, the scientist, the entrepreneur has the entire cake
Mm,
that has a certain value. But if we would like to increase the value, we have to start to cut the cake in slices. And the ownership of the slices of the original entrepreneur is shrinking.
mm,
Smaller and smaller slices, but if you're doing that job in the good way, the value of one slice will be bigger than the value of the entire initial cake. In
mm.
doing that, you need also to sell slices to complement skills and competences, unless they are not already present at the beginning, but usually this is not the case. Obviously, that way of thinking apply if you would like, as a pharma company, to build a strong long-term partnership. If you are only interested in acquiring an asset or in licensing a patent, in that case, transactional deal,
Mm.
usually pharma company analyze only science. But if you would like to develop externally something that is high risk, high reward, you need to be sure that your counterpart is able to complement and synergize and will be able really to develop. Because in that case, more the companies stay outside, better is. Because if we intervene directly, we will be obliged to insert in the startup all our processes, and the startup will start to become slow. We need flexibility.
Yeah, I agree to what you say. I think it's the difference between doing tech transfer from a research organization and just plugging in the patent versus putting the patent and the team into a corporate shell to later make a bigger deal with a pharma company.
Yeah.
And when I sum up what you said for myself and tie my thinking to what you said, my recommendation now after this call would be um, it's good to start with science, but you need the visionary and the business acumen on board level, ideally in a person. When your company progresses to increase the odds, you need second a guy or a woman who who understands the manufacturing part and scaling part. The fourth skill that you mentioned was the clinical development. You need to understand, have
If it's a
someone.
drug or a medtech or a digital health solution, you have to understand what does it means to reach the market.
Yeah, and plug it into the healthcare system. So not
Yeah.
only reach the market, but create a product and a solution that really fits perfect into every healthcare system in the world.
And at the beginning, you have really general ideas that will be more and more fine-tuned following the development of the company. But you need to have general ideas at the beginning.
Mm,
Because if you don't have that, you are not able to see the market. You are saying my drug will treat cancer. Full stop.
mm.
I'm good. I'm a wonderful scientist. I know how to treat cancer. No one will invest in that company.
There are so many. Yeah, this is true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the last thing that I heard that you mentioned when we talk about the ideal board of an evolving company at the end point when they come to you, is the value creation, not only the business acumen, but how does this translate into financial value creation? Because you need to finance the acquisition at the end of the day and spill money back or play money back to the ecosystem so that they can keep evolving. To to demonstrate that, it would be a CFO or, for example, also a VC. When a startup teams get VCs on board and can show the uptake of the value and
Mm.
that some external party is already willing to pay and add something, that would probably help also explain that.
It's true. Another time, it's not mandatory to have that kind of competence at the beginning.
Mm,
You can develop and include in your team that competence following the development of the company, and you will realize immediately that some role changed in time. The original CEO probably is a scientist,
mm,
but after the first round of investment, the CEO became a professional. It's someone that is able to manage a company. And the same happens for the value creation. At the beginning, you can have your friends that is supporting you in doing accountancy, but when you grow, when you raise a couple of million of euro, you will need a professional management of the money, and you need to be credible because you are asking maybe of for 10 million euro, and you have to demonstrate that you are able to manage 10 million euro.
mm, mm.
And the same for the value proposition. At the beginning, it could be general. But more you are advancing, more you have scientific data that are justifying your hypothesis, more you can segment the market, understand exactly the indication, understand exactly the problem that you are solving, and demonstrating and explaining the value that is behind that solution. And you have to translate everything in numbers, unfortunately. You have to move from I will treat cancer to I will treat glioblastoma in patient aged 20, 30, and this is the reimbursement cost. This is the value of the market. I would like to reach that percentage of the market. I'm obviously simplifying, but that kind of logic is the logic that has to drive a startup. From a pharma company point of view, more we are approaching the market, more we perceive the risk managed, and more we are able to evaluate. It's not only
Mm.
scientists, it's not only science if it's a partnership approach. It's something more. We need a partner, and the partner has to grow with us.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And I think for the scientists at the beginning of the journey, it's something important just to think through for themselves what type of personalities they are, where they see their future, and how comfortable they feel in a corporate setting versus in a scientific setting. I think it would really help every scientist starting with a company to run through this thought process after you laid it out before getting on the journey, just to
Yeah.
have an understanding, what's my personality? Where do I fit in? Am I the CEO like Steve Jobs who wants to build a huge team and a global success? Or am I rather the scientists like all the Nobel Prize winners who feel more comfortable in a lab and doing basic research? I think this is just a scaling question for them.
Yeah, and there is not a better or worse. It's not that if
Yeah.
I'm not the CEO, I'm not important. It's something that another thing, it's linked to the personality of entrepreneur, but it's something that we are feeling.
Mm,
We feel when there is someone that is saying, I'm today the CEO because I'm the scientist. I would like to be the CEO for the next 20 years. At the same time, teaching at university and doing research at university. Is it credible? Yes, for the first 2, 3, 5 years, no
mm,
more. At a
mm,
certain point, you need to approach and to manage the problem in a professional way.
mm,
You have to choose. I'm a scientist, a university professor, or I'm an entrepreneur. There are scientists that decide to become entrepreneur.
Mm.
It's not impossible, but it's something that we are evaluating because this is important from a partnership point of view for the development. But it's not important only for us. It's important for every pharma company that is following that partnership-based approach.
I think this is an important thing to understand for the people playing in the ecosystem. If you want to continue with your open innovation approach and ecosystem approach, the early stage companies need to understand what they need to do to become a credible partner along the entire process and not get stuck at the early part and don't know how to move forward. I think, especially, I mentioned Steve Jobs before. I think the
Mm.
genius move of Steve Jobs in 1997 was that he understood that and said, okay, who am I? I'm the visionary. This means I have a weakness on the operational side, so I need Tim Cook. And he got Tim Cook in, I think, in 1997 or 98 on
Yeah.
board. And this is exactly the thought process that every entrepreneur, also in the biotech area
Yeah,
must go through.
it's really similar. It's really similar. To develop a biotech product is complex.
Mm.
It's not only what we can do in a university lab. This is probably 40% of the problem, but we need to move out of the university lab to go in a manufacturing plant. And when you enter in that optic, you realize immediately, oh my God, how many technical competences I will need to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can produce a protein or an antibody in my small lab, small scale, but to do the same activity with a large scale require a completely different competence. If you realize that, you are a wonderful potential entrepreneur
Yeah. And
because you are humble vis-a-vis what you don't know. And another time, I would like to outline that we use a humble approach. We know that we don't know. And we know that we have to learn from an external actor. This is what make open innovation interesting for a pharma company. It permits to the pharma company to explore what they don't know.
my apologies for sticking so long to this part
Mm.
of the conversation, because when I look on the market in the last 20 years, I have seen so many teams that have the same team composition at the beginning of the company and 5 years later. There is no change, same competence. And then they wonder at the end of the day, why don't we sign any deal with pharma companies? And why is it so hard to get VCs on board? I understand the VC part but from our conversation now, I understand better that also as a pharma company, you want to see this progress in the team, that they acquire new skills and that they get new people on board who can tackle these additional problems besides science.
It's like a football team.
Mm,
If the football team doesn't win, you change the player.
mm,
Or you add a player to the original team in order to increase the flexibility, increase the capability to cope with different situations. In an entrepreneurial team, is really similar. You have the starting team. You realize that the starting team is not a convincing investor. If you insist with the same proposition, probably you will receive the same answer. So you have to integrate the team. It
mm.
doesn't mean that you have to push out someone. It means that you have to integrate the competences that are missing. And companies are organizations. They are changing in time, and change is the only constant in our life. For startups, they are following the same rules. They have to change in their development process. If they are not able to change, probably they have a higher risk of failure.
Yeah, that's true. Let's come back to the big corporation problem, struggling with innovation. You mentioned
Mm.
that the DNA of a big corporation is resistant to change. Why is that?
Oh, for surviving, for what I call the linear growth paradigm.
Mhm,
Uh, Big corporates are risk adverse because they tend to keep the situation at the same growth level than in the past. If I'm growing 20% a year, I would like to continue to grow 20% a year. So I have a linear path of growth. In doing that, particularly if there is a strong internal R&D, there are the not invented here syndrome that is growing. We have the best talent in the world, so we know what we have to do. We have the habits, the standard habits element. You are from Austria, probably you know Semmelweis story.
Mhm.
Semmelweis was a doctor. It was saying there are a increasing number of babies that are dying because the doctor are coming out from anatomy pathology without washing their hands. It was fired. No one was trusting to Semmelweis. And this is what is happening a little bit in a big company. You have your belief, you are bringing something of new. They are saying, no, it's not possible. We tried 10 years ago and we failed, so it means that it's impossible. It's the Semmelweis effect. It's not true. Maybe in 10 years, something changed externally. There is the problem that in big company, we believe that the risk could be always evaluated. If you evaluate the risk, you avoid the risk. But there is another element that is uncertainty. You
Mhm.
cannot evaluate uncertainty. When you are dealing with early stage startup, you are able to appreciate uncertainty, no risk, because risk are 100% of failure. And you have to understand if you would like to put a bet or not, if you believe that this is a rule-breaking technology or not. Another time, companies tend to avoid risk. So if you bring uncertainty on the table, they are quite conservative. And the last point is standardization of processes. In big organization, you need to standardize processes for efficiency. More you standardize processes, less you are flexible. Yes, less you are open to change the process. Another time, you need to decide to do that, but it's easier to don't decide. And this is happening in every big organization, not only in the industrial world, but also in public big organization. You realize that the not invented here syndrome is existing, that there is a resistance against change, that there is the idea to avoid risk because failure is a bad word. If failure happens, oh my God, we are looking for the guilty. At the opposite, who is working in innovation know that failure is part of our life. We need
Mhm.
failures because without failures, we cannot progress. And we need the discontinuity. We need to fight against, I call it the gravity of big corporation. It's like a planet. They have a gravity, they attract. At the opposite, we need to go out of the gravity because this is the only way to do something of completely different. So there are elements that are common for every big organization that are also affecting pharma company. But this is the reason why pharma companies decided, and they are still working in that direction, to create units that are working in a slightly different way. They have higher degree of freedom. They are exposed to the external world. They are doing internal idea generation in a different way, exactly because this is the way to try to overcome the obstacle. It's not easy. It's difficult also because once that you reach a result, you have in any case to make compatible the result with the standard processes of a company. That point arrive, but at least in the idea generation, concept generation, and problem analysis, you have a higher degree of freedom. But it happens, and it's difficult for a startup that is going from outside to understand that element because they are not present in a startup where everything is flexible, everything change every day, flat organization, there are not hierarchical layers, speed, and so on. It's difficult to understand. There are two cultural worlds that are colliding.
Yeah, that's great. I would like to dive into one aspect that you mentioned deeper. I have read this book. I mean, it looks like product placement, but it isn't. I don't
Yeah.
get paid anything, The Venture Mindset. And I had Alex Dang on my podcast. And you mentioned that you differentiated in your explanation between uncertainty and risk. And this is something I have never thought about before. Can you explain it a little bit in more detail why you make a difference between uncertainty on one hand and risk, and what does that mean for a big organization?
You know, the risks are quite standardized.
Mhm.
You can try to analyze with a probabilistic approach what could happen in the future. If a drug, there is attrition rate, that you have X% of probability to fail, that there are those data, probably you will have side effect. So you can evaluate, transform the risk in a number. And this is one of the traditional way that pharma companies are using when they are evaluating a technology. They have standard evaluation scorecard where you put the risk, you analyze the risk, you benchmark the risk, and you take a decision. And companies tend to use the risk assessment approach as a way to avoid risk, or at least to identify risk that could be managed. And this is what a venture capitalist sometimes is doing. They are evaluating the company, they are benchmarking the opportunities, and they decide the level of risk that they would like to take to have a balanced portfolio. Uncertainty are different. You are not able to transform uncertainty in a number. When you start with a really crazy scientific hypothesis, you are not able, if it's crazy, to transform the fact that they can fail in a number. You need to put a bet. If you trust that it's nice, it's good feeling, mixed to brain feeling. You put a bet. You cannot calculate the probability of success because simply you don't know, you don't have the element. And this is happening when you are working really early stage. And when you are working with technologies or business models, because it happens also for business models that are completely different from what you know from the market standard. Uncertainty is something that has to be managed. Risk could be avoided. Uncertainty cannot be avoided. And so if you enter in that way of thinking, you need places where you can manage uncertainty. I was mentioning before the concept of sandboxes. You need sandboxes where you can play and you can learn. And maybe you can fail and you can restart from failure. You need the capability to extract knowledge from failure derived from uncertainty. And you need to understand how big is your appetite for uncertainty, not for risk. Because the appetite of risk is a number. I decided that I can afford initiatives that have 35% of probability of failure. Uncertainty is completely different. And uncertainty, it's really relevant when you have rule-breaking technologies. If you think what is happened with, I don't know, CAR T at the beginning, no one was able to understand exactly if CAR T could be moved to clinics. Someone put a bet on the table saying, okay, there is a patent. I don't remember if it's Columbia or Stanford because I don't remember. I put some money in investing in a company that is developing CAR T for oncology. At the beginning, it was really a bet. Obviously, you have to interpret uncertainty with a portfolio approach. You need to have a balanced portfolio of activities where there is also space for uncertainty, but the rest of the pipeline of the portfolio has to counterbalance the risk of failure. You cannot invest everything on crazy things, but at the same time, you need to know crazy things. You need to be aware that there are technologies that are growing, that seems today stupid, and maybe tomorrow will fail, but that can increase the stock of knowledge that we have. Otherwise, we risk to lose opportunities for growth, for progress. In the history of human being, several times we embrace uncertainty. When the US government decided to send the man on the moon, they were not able to understand the risk. They decided, let's send the man on the moon, 25 years. And every time they manage uncertainty and risk. without arriving to that point, I think that pharma company, if they would like really to change the life of the patients,
Mhm.
have to continue to invest in the linear way to do things, but at the same time, they have to look for exponential growth opportunities, because exponential growth will really change the life of the patient.
Yeah, that's
They
true.
will change the patient journey. They will change the patient life. And exponential technologies usually, not always, but usually have two characteristics. The first one is that they are the result of the cross-fertilization of different technological fields. And the second, they have a multiple impact on our society. From a certain point of view, AI is a good example. Is a software technology, yes, that require hardware. So is at the interface of two worlds. At the same time, is AI only conceived to support drug discovery? No, obviously. Drug discovery is one of the 1,000 use cases that we can identify. That kind of technologies is changing our life. And you have to understand that at the beginning, it was considered crazy. It's such as, I don't know if you know the concept of neuromorphic computer.
No, no.
It's a silent trend that we have
Mhm.
today.
Mhm.
Neuromorphic computer are computers that are simulating our brain. They have one wonderful element that is interesting. They are working in parallel and not in sequence. What does it mean? If you replicate our neuronal network in a computer, they are quicker, faster, and more precise. It's a trend that is silent because it's not known by the general opinion, but it's an interesting technological trend. It's risky, yes. There are uncertainty, yes, because maybe the paradigm is not working. But why to don't think how to increase the knowledge around that technology? And why to don't think how that
Mhm.
technology could change what we are delivering today to the patient? Quantum technology is another example. We change the paradigm. It's no more the normal computer that we are using, completely different computers with qubit, with a different way to understand things, with a different way to calculate and to elaborate. It's crazy. It's no more crazy. There are already commercial services on quantum computing, but 5 years ago, they were
It's
considered as a
not
crazy
crazy.
things. Not 50 years ago,
Mhm.
because one of the elements that we are more and more aware is that the time of development of technologies and the time of absorption of technology is shrinking.
Mhm.
Everything is quick today. And we need to interact with those crazy technology because we need to explore. If you are not exploring, you risk to be not the loser, but you risk to be always the second, the third, the fourth on a market. We would like to try to be the first. And in doing that, we need to be exposed to crazy things.
That's an interesting take. But I try to come up with an example to understand it better. So, for example, let's stay with AI and with the chip sector, which is now the big troublemaker in AI. Risk would be when someone places a bet on any chip maker. Let's think 2010. So they invest capital in this chip maker, private company or public company, and the capital is simply at risk. This company can fail or not, basically. So it can be gone or
Yeah,
not. The uncertainty element in this area is when I think back to 2010, the chip sector was mostly a cyclical business. Nobody thought it would be disruptive. And all the feedback I got back then, 15 years ago, was when you invest in chip, you can make a little bit of money with the cycles. But there is a finite demand of chips on the planet, and this won't grow because in 2010, probably what we have smartphones were new. People usually had their home computer, offices, so the demand seemed to be at the capacity. The uncertainty element in this area is whether or not this whole sector will become exponential. This is completely uncertain. Nobody can predict that. You brought the example with CAR T, same space. an investor putting money in a CAR T therapy, let's talk about 10, 20 years ago when the idea was really new and nobody was working on that and it was not clear, will this be an application one day? That's the risk putting money in that. The uncertainty is the question mark over 20 years. Will this be something somewhen or not?
It's like that. If we can use the example of the chip, the risk is, do we have to invest in the actual chip company?
Mm,
Understanding that the chip will follow a certain development. The uncertainty is we have to bet on a neuromorphic computer chip,
mm,
completely different technology. We don't
mm,
know if it's working or not.
mm.
Simply, we don't know, but it's cool. I'm a little bit exaggerating, but from an investor point of view, you have always that kind of choice. Are you investing in something that you know that where you can predict the growth, and if you can predict the growth, you can predict the risk, or you have to invest in something that you don't know if it's working or not. You are even not so able to understand everything,
Mm.
but you realize that there is a so strong potential impact on the market that probably if it's working, there is a value. But you don't know, you are not able to evaluate the risk of failure because maybe it's 100%, maybe it's one, you don't know. You are not able to translate uncertainty in a number. And
Yeah,
it happens.
I think Kostler from Kostler Ventures, the founder of Kostler Ventures, would definitely agree. I read in a book that he said if the chance of success is only 0.001%, that's enough for me to invest. So this is this crazy, uncertain ideas. Nobody
Yeah,
knows whether it will be something or not, but he takes the bet. And this is also something that you embrace in the industry.
we try to do that.
Mm,
Obviously, we cannot take 100% of uncertainty, but we tend to consider and to evaluate also what seems at the first glance crazy.
mm,
We didn't exclude something only because it's completely strange. I can give you an example. We are working in chronic respiratory diseases, and the usual way to do diagnosis is spirometry. This is a standard of care.
mm,
There are a lot of technologies that are improving spirometry. At the same time, we are evaluating a vocal biomarker. It's
mm,
crazy. No, it's not crazy. There are technologies that permit to do that, even if there are no product on the market that are doing that. But we are exploring that world. We are exploring world where we are correlating, I don't know, heart rate, oxygen saturation, movement of the chest as a way to predict crisis.
mm.
And we are not sure that is working, but we are exploring, we are trying to understand. Not necessarily we are doing an investment, because maybe the relation is not reaching that point.
Mm.
But we are exploring and we are trying to understand, because that knowledge will be key for us to take decision. If we exclude a priori, we risk not only to lose an opportunity, but to be not able to understand what will happen in the future. And we need to do that. This is the real value of a big pharma company, I think, is the capability to evaluate. But to evaluate, you need to know. Otherwise, you exclude automatically what you don't know.
This leads me to the cultural question, what you said. I asked myself, 10 years ago, is the first time when I started asking myself, why is Silicon Valley winning and why Europe not in the 90s? I've always thought we are on the same level.
Mm.
And embracing uncertainty and risk taking is definitely something that's different. This is my question then to you. What does that mean for our European culture? Is this something that is ingrained in European culture, taking risks and living with uncertainty?
Europe is in general more risk adverse than US. That is the first point, because we have a longer history.
Mm.
And the history teaches us it is dangerous to take risk. Let's say. Is it completely a good approach? No, because the approach that we are following drive us to the surviving,
Mm.
not to the leadership. If you would like to lead the change, you need to take risk. You need to understand uncertainty. and you need to be bold. We are not enough bold as a continent. We are too fragmented. We are not a unique market. We are 28, 27 different markets. We are competing each other. And the result is that we are small, defending our own boundaries. We need to go out of that paradigm. If we create a bigger market, we can afford more risk simply because we will have critical mass able to manage the consequence of a failure. If we create a unique market, we will have capital markets that will be different, with a strong space for early stage investment by venture capitalists. If we have a new way to manage the interaction that is existing between universities and investors, we will have probably an increasing number of startups that will grow, because we have in Europe an incredible number of startups, but we have not so many startups that are growing. And the consequence for a big pharma will be that we will be in an ecosystem that is more suitable for the growth. It's easy? No, it's not easy. As we know, the geopolitical situation is not helping us. It's more and more chaotic. And some decision by some of our historical partners are even challenging some of our beliefs. But we have to try to work in that direction. We have to try to synergize more across the different innovative ecosystems that we are in Europe. We have to go out of the idea that the ecosystem are in competition. We are part of a unique, big, innovative ecosystem that is Europe, where there are different hotspots, hubs that we have to synergize. Otherwise, we will be not able to reach the right dimension, able to permit global competition. And for a pharma company, this is key. We need an environment where we can grow, not an environment where when we have a product, we need 28 different authorizations to sell the product. And this is the huge difference vis-a-vis US. In US, you need one. And it's a big difference for us and for the startup. When we analyze the startup business plan, we always smile when we saw that there is the plan to sell the same product in 10 countries the same year. It's impossible in Europe. It's impossible. You need to have relation with every single authority. It's not productive. It's not efficient from that point of view. So Europe has to work in order to create a real unique market, not only for guts and capital, but also for brains. And we need to work in order to synergize the different components of the system. This is key. This is important. We need to work in order to create a more and more platform to transform science and innovation. And we need more and more to reinforce the relation that are existing between universities, startups, and big companies and investors, because those four elements are key for the development of innovation. Last but not least, we need also to think how the public administration could be supportive. It's not simply financing. It's procurement. Innovative procurement could be really impactful, because it will drive the market, particularly in Europe, where the healthcare market is based in general on public healthcare system. We need to work a little bit in doing that.
One
But yes,
question.
there is a strong possibility, because we have absolutely good science in Europe. Nothing to blame against US. We are the same level.
I completely agree. We have great science and we have also great entrepreneurs. But the playbook that I give to companies when they start working with me, either as a board member or as a consultant, is a simple one. So, look, if you are convinced that your idea qualifies for a product and product development, found a company here in Europe, get public funds, you get a lot of public funds here in Europe, start building a team. But be aware that there is no money on the market between late preclinical stage, Series A, and IPO stage.
Yeah.
If you want to build your company, move to the US, get money there, bring it with the help of US pharma companies to the market, and then come back to Europe. My question to you is, one, do you see it similarly? Or if no, why do you see it different?
Let's unwear the hat of a corporate. When I discuss it with a startup,
Mm,
I'm giving a quite similar suggestion. Look to US.
mm,
Don't stop to do R&D in Europe because we have competitive advantages. But look to US for fundraising. And after that, being an European company, return to Europe. It's a pragmatic suggestion. Obviously, it is heavily dependent on the type of technology and the solution that you would like to develop. But if you are developing high-tech biotech products, in vivo gene therapy, gene editing, and so on, US is a better market. It's against my DNA to say that, obviously. I'm
mm.
European, proud to be European, working in Europe for an European company. But this is the reality. If I wear the hat of Chiesi, I'm saying also that in Europe there are really good companies that could partner with startup. Big global protagonist, mid-sized family-owned company that could partner with those startups supporting the growth. It is against the idea to go in US? No. But it requires an effort, corporate side, startup side, to approach each other. You need to stop to consider big pharma companies simply as an ATM, someone that has the money. At the same time, big corporates have to stop to think that startups are made by scientists that are not having any business acumen, they have only science. So you can buy for a small amount of money what has a really, really high value. So you have to go out of those stereotypes. But if you are able to do that, you can really create partnership platform where you can work. And probably you can integrate or, let's say, change the rule. You can avoid to go in US immediately. You can go in US after a certain stage of development, because also to go in US too early could be dangerous. And you can work with the corporate in going in US. It's something that I think it will become common in the future, particularly for non-pharma solution, to partner with European companies that have already maybe a commercial network in US to exploit the synergy. This is quite a good approach to support the growth of the pharma company, at the same time the growth of the startup. But you need to go out of the two stereotypes. Startups are only science and the corporates are only money. You have to go out of those stereotypes, and you can work together, trying to go in US together.
Yeah,
Or
totally.
China, because it's not only US. It
No,
could be China.
it's a wonderful ride. I totally agree. I had on Tuesday Raphael Rosengarten from Genialis on my podcast, and he runs this model that you explained, science here in Europe, headquartered in the United States, but relocated from Europe to the United States, and partners with European pharma companies. I think it's this beautiful world. And for the scientists and entrepreneurs with China, with Saudi Arabia, with UAE, joining the race, it's really a wonderful world to move forward. But when I wear my European hat and being proud of Europe, I have a similar question. Like you, I would say, from the value creation perspective, it's highly unsatisfying to see tax money flowing into the startup world, and then they relocate to the US, and then the US government gets the big tax payback and not the European one. My question to you in this respect is, we have a lot of things to improve here in Europe, in my opinion. When you had unlimited resources and could remove one big blocking stone overnight, what would this blocking stone be?
I think that I will try to remove country boundaries to create a unique market for
Mm,
pharma. It will speed up the entrance to the market of innovative products. It will create for startups opportunities that are based on the fact that one of the biggest barriers to reach the market will be removed. If that unique pharma market will be complemented by a better capability to finance the growth of the startup, it will be impactful, because we will become a quite interesting market for high-tech solution, because we are a sophisticated market. We are probably, from a certain point of view, more sophisticated than US. But we need to go out of the 28, 27 market that we have today. One authorization, one market, one reimbursement. That will be wonderful.
Fabrizio, I couldn't agree more. It's really wonderful talking with you. And I just checked the clock, and we have the final 4 minutes before the
Okay.
2 hour mark. Time is really flying when you have fun. My final question to you, after our conversation, what's one message that you would give to the audience today at the end of our conversation?
Be a pragmatic dreamer. You have to be bold, you have to dream, but you have to understand that corporates are a pragmatic organization. So your dream has to be contextualized and explained in a way that pharma company could understand how to transform the dream in a product for a patient. So to be a pragmatic dreamer, I think, is a nice final word and final suggestion.
Fabrizio, thank you very much for your time in this fantastic conversation. I learned a lot of new things, and I wish you and your team and your company all the best in shaping Europe and shaping the Europe Pharma Company. And let's make it really one unique market that drives innovation, not only in basic research, but all the way through to the markets.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you to everyone listening me, and good luck for everyone.
Fabrizio, have a great weekend. Have a great Easter weekend ahead, and let's catch up soon.